You know, I received a lovely email from our founder, Ann DeBusk, a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Suzanne, how are you? This pandemic was not in your job description." It's a true statement, Ann. And yet as leaders, we're called to navigate the best and worst of times, the unexpected and sometimes the unimaginable. So first, I want to thank my ALF partners in crime, the ALF staff, who have been just tremendous over these last several months in really pivoting and doing some tremendous work for our organization. I also want to thank our board directors and the committees that continue ALF's work, in particular the Network Engagement Committee that helps with this event every year. We are so appreciative of all of your efforts. So I want to just take a minute tonight to share with you briefly about some things we've been up to this last year and a half, but more importantly, I want to talk about our future together. And I want to talk about our collective call to action. So let's start with the 2 fellows classes and our fellows program. You all have been practicing our mantra this year of grace, empathy, and flexibility. Class 37, let me talk to you for a minute. You didn't get a chance to finish your year in person or get a proper graduation. Your day is coming, my friends, and it'll be a party. So please give a shout out to our wonderful Class 37 members. Do it in the chat if you want. Say a couple of great things about them. And then next, our COVID class. Oh, there's the Network Engagement Committee. Hey, guys. And then next would be Class 37. We're so delighted to have you all as a part of the Senior Fellows Network. So next is our COVID Class 39. Several of you have actually reached out to me and said, what is going on with the Fellows program? You convened in person for the first time on March 13th. There you are at Mexican Heritage Plaza, engaging in our signature drumming exercise in circles as the world was beginning to shut down around you. You convene in home groups and as buddies in your backyards. You check in, meditate, and dialogue on Zoom. You've done 7-minute stories and explored the history of racism and our role as leaders in this moment. You know, it's no accident that months before COVID hit, 4 healthcare administrators, the COO of Santa Clara County, the CEO of the Community Foundation, and the superintendent of Santa Clara County Schools all said yes to this year's Fellows program, along with 17 other rock stars. Imagine being in a Fellows class at a time like this with leaders like that. So please help me in welcoming to the network the resilient, the courageous, the persistent Fellows of Class 39. Woohoo! And you can welcome them in the chat. As you know, our Senior Fellow engagement work has been off the charts, friends. And during my tenure as National ALF Board Chair, we've produced the first national Zoom dialogues with Senior Fellows from across the country. We are on track to facilitate more convenings this year than we have in the last 2 years combined. Since Shelter in Place began, Network Weaver Akemi Flynn and Chief Impact Officer Jenny Nicholas have facilitated 114 convenings, 114 since March 13th. From foundation leaders who committed to recentering their focus on communities of color in response to the current economic crisis, to law enforcement and civil rights leaders courageously reimagining public safety, listening to each other and learning together, to arts organizations who've worked in collaboration to secure funding, and are now 3 cohorts of nonprofit CEOs, 30 total, thanks to the Hewlett and the Packard Foundations, who are diving deep into how they integrate and operationalize their DEI values from the board to the frontline staff. The impacts of these deep dialogues have a ripple effect it's immeasurable. So now I want to talk a bit about the future and your role in it. As you can see on the screen, there are 4 pillars to our new strategic plan that took effect May 1st. 1, offering a best-in-class regional fellows program. We're tailoring the fellows' experience now to the gifts and the needs of the unique leaders in each class, and welcoming San Francisco and East Bay fellows who've continued to join the fellows program as we deepen our focus on regional problem solving. 2, continuing to add value to the senior fellow experience, doubling down on those dialogues that you've been a part of, and the network weaving tools like Weaver, thank you for downloading that if you haven't yet, hop to it, and wewow.org, which is the brainchild of our own Greg Brandstrom, a network mapping tool that helps us track who is working on what. We love it, Greg. And then pillar 3, becoming the go-to organization for facilitating difficult conversations. Last month, we formally launched ALF Insights, facilitation and convening the ALF way, for teams looking to bring ALF elements to difficult dialogues and offsites. And finally, let's focus on pillar 4, strengthening and scaling the ALF movement. Our call to show up in the world as our best and highest selves for the good of our entire community. Friends, as we stare down the most consequential election of our lifetimes, during a global pandemic that is particularly debilitating and deadly for those on the margins, as the band-aids of systemic racism are ripped off on city streets, on Twitter pages and national newscasts, we cannot, as leaders, wait for this moment to pass and sink back into the status quo. We can't point fingers and pass judgments, make a donation to a worthy cause and call it a day. That is the opposite of being in. Being a senior fellow of the American Leadership Forum calls on us to do something bigger. So I'm going to ask you tonight to take these ALF senior fellow commitments to a whole new level. 1, take the call and make the call. Turn to the network as a resource to learn, to engage, and to make your community better. 2, choose dialogue first. Come into conversations with curiosity and a beginner's mind. We cannot come up with big solutions if we don't immerse ourselves in knowing the problem from perspectives other than our own. Skipping to 4, get engaged in ALF. Your participation makes the entire network stronger, and you guys have been knocking that one out of the park. And I want to focus on number 3, educate, innovate, and donate. Educate yourselves on why social systems are broken instead of making assumptions. Be part of or seek out innovative systems change efforts that solve problems instead of perpetuating them. Donate your time, your talent, your treasure to these efforts, because it's our role as senior fellows to get off the sidelines and get in the game. Friends, we're in an all hands on deck fight right now for the soul and survival of Silicon Valley. Right now, residents has more COVID positive cases than do the cities of Cupertino, Los Altos, Los Gatos, Palo Alto, and Saratoga combined. Santa Clara County schools are 38,000 computers short for their students, with kids sitting outside Starbucks and in parking lots trying to get on the internet because their neighborhoods were redlined out of high-speed internet access or they can't afford it. 30% of Silicon Valley households are living in poverty and below self-sufficiency standards, and that was before. So we can throw up our hands and we can make assumptions and point fingers, or we can ask ourselves, do my actions or inactions play a role in solving these problems or perpetuating them? You know, the many fine doctors in our network will tell us that you can't cure a disease with Band-Aids. You have to root out the whole infection in order to heal. In order to remedy the consequences of decades of systemic injustices, we too must root out those and address those root causes. It takes courage. And those of us with privilege have had the choice to engage in the conversation about racism and poverty when convenient, leave when we're uncomfortable, or not engage at all. Friends, many of our network members and our neighbors don't have that choice. They battle the disease of racism and poverty every day. God, I've learned so much from you all. I'm moved by our common humanity. I learned that you're afraid to let your adult son go jogging in your neighborhood in Menlo Park because he's Black. I learned that white supremacists vandalized your health clinic because of who you serve. I learned that you're a closet conservative, and as a woman of color, you get attacked when talking about your beliefs. I also witnessed repeatedly ALF circles of empathy and vulnerability, break down barriers and build bridges. ALF board member David Yarnold said recently, being a good leader means being mindful, practicing dialogue, and being an anti-racist. My call to all of us today is to stay in it. Stay in the dialogue. ALF taught us how to listen, to suspend judgment, and to be curious. But with all the ALF principles and relationships we gain through the Fellows Program mean nothing unless we put them into action. So instead of only collecting cans of food for Second Harvest Food Bank, do we have the courage to ask, why is there food insecurity in Silicon Valley? Instead of lamenting a diversity pipeline problem, do we have the courage to ask, where is my company not recruiting from? Instead of only making annual donations to the homeless shelter, ask the question, how is homelessness morally acceptable in Silicon Valley? Imagine, senior fellows, if we from the public and the private and the nonprofit sectors collectively embrace ownership over the health of our entire community and have the courage to move towards solutions rooted in liberty, opportunity, and justice for all. So when you leave here tonight, I dare you to listen. I dare you to be uncomfortable. I challenge you to be a part of changing systems that have for decades produced outcomes that have left so many behind. Inspire us with your pledges tonight. Right now, share them in the chat. How will you be a part of leading for the we and not just the me? As senior fellows, it's our responsibility and a beautiful honor to lead with love in our hearts and courage in our actions. I dare you, senior fellows. Thank you.